Emma and Daniel had been married for 7 years. They lived in a quiet neighborhood outside of Seattle, in a small but warm house where every corner held memories of their life together. Emma loved their routine Sunday mornings at the farmer's market. Evenings cooking side by side, long walks when the air smelled of rain. Their love had been steady and comfortable, the kind that made her feel safe. But lately, Daniel seemed distant, distracted, as though his thoughts wandered to places she couldn't reach. It started with little things, him staring too long at his phone, conversations that ended before they even began, nights when he seemed restless beside her in bed. Emma tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just stress from work, but deep down she knew something was shifting. Daniel had always been open with her, but now his silence felt heavier, filled with unspoken words. One Friday evening, after dinner, they sat together in the living room. The glow from the lamps softened the room, and Emma thought maybe it was the right moment to ask him what was on his mind. Before she could speak, Daniel turned to her with a look that was both nervous and eager. He held his glass of wine too tightly, his knuckles pale, and then he leaned closer, as if about to share a secret. "Emma," he began, his voice low, "what if we tried something different? Something exciting?" She gave him a puzzled look. "What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated, his eyes flicking away before returning to hers. "What if we tried a couple swap?" The words hit her like cold water. For a moment she thought she had misheard him. Daniel, the man who once promised she was all he ever needed, was now suggesting something she had never imagined. Emma's heart raced, her mind struggling to keep up. She stared at him, trying to find a trace of humor in his face, a sign that he was joking. But he wasn't. His eyes held a seriousness that unsettled her. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "I just think maybe it could bring something new between us. Maybe it could be fun." Emma felt her throat tighten. She had expected many things from this conversation. Maybe a confession about stress, maybe worries about their future, but not this. The suggestion felt like a crack in the ground beneath her feet, one that threatened to split wider the longer she thought about it. She tried to steady her voice. "Daniel, why would you even think of that?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not that I don't love you. I do, more than anything. But sometimes I wonder if we're stuck. Maybe this could be a way to break free from the routine." His words stung. Emma loved their routine. It was their life, their story. Wasn't stability something to be cherished, not discarded? She looked at him, her chest heavy with questions she couldn't voice all at once. Did he find her boring? Did he want someone else? Or was this just curiosity speaking? A restless thought that he turned into a suggestion? She took a deep breath, choosing silence instead of anger. She needed time to understand what this meant. The man she trusted with her whole heart had just opened a door she never wanted to see that night. When she lay beside him in bed, Emma stared at the ceiling, her mind a storm of emotions. The room felt different, the air heavy with unspoken fears. Every beat of her heart echoed the same question. If I say yes, will this bring us closer or tear us apart forever? And as Daniel's breathing steadied into sleep, Emma lay awake, realizing that her marriage was no longer the same. A single suggestion had changed everything. The days after Daniel's shocking suggestion were filled with silence that Emma couldn't escape. She carried the words with her everywhere at work, while driving, even while cooking dinner. Daniel tried to act normal, but his eyes betrayed him. He was waiting, hoping she would bring it up again. Emma avoided it, wishing it would disappear on its own. But one evening, he broke the silence. "I've already spoken to Michael and Sarah," he said as they cleared the table. Emma froze. Michael and Sarah were their closest friends, a couple they often shared meals and laughter with. Sarah was Emma's confidant, the one she told secrets to over coffee. Michael was quiet and kind, always respectful, someone Emma trusted because Sarah loved him. To imagine them involved in Daniel's idea felt like a betrayal before it even began. "You told them," Emma whispered, her voice tight. Daniel nodded, as if it were the most natural thing. "I just wanted to see if they'd even consider it. And they said yes." Her chest ached. She wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't form. Instead, she just looked at him, realizing how far ahead he had already gone without her. The choice wasn't just in her hands anymore. Now it was real. The night of the invitation came faster than she expected. Emma dressed slowly, standing in front of the mirror longer than usual. She chose a simple navy dress, something she normally wore for dinners out. But tonight the fabric felt heavier, like it carried a meaning she hadn't agreed to. Her reflection didn't comfort her. It only reminded her of the uncertainty waiting ahead. When they arrived at Michael and Sarah's house, everything seemed the same at first. The smell of roasted chicken, the soft music playing in the background, the warm glow of candles. It was just like any other dinner they had shared. They laughed about work, spoke about neighbors, sipped wine, and passed dishes across the table. But beneath the surface, Emma felt every glance lingered too long. Every laugh sounded just a little heavier. Sarah touched Daniel's arm while pouring him a drink, her fingers resting a beat too long. Emma noticed her stomach tightening. Michael, usually reserved, seemed unusually attentive to her, his gaze catching hers more often than before. Each moment carried a hidden weight, like they were all standing on the edge of something dangerous but pretending not to see it. Emma tried to stay composed, but the air around her felt thick. She watched Sarah lean closer to Daniel, whispering something that made him laugh in a way Emma hadn't heard in a long time. A quiet ache spread through her chest. This was more than curiosity now. It was a test of everything she thought she knew about her marriage. When the plates were cleared and the wine glasses refilled, the conversation shifted. The laughter faded, replaced by a silence that hummed with unspoken expectation. Emma felt her pulse quicken. She could sense it coming. The moment she had been dreading since Daniel first whispered the idea to her. It was Michael who finally broke the silence. He leaned forward, his voice calm but steady. "So, do we talk about it? Or just see where the night takes us?" Emma's breath caught. The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. Her hands trembled slightly, and she pressed them against her lap to hide it. She looked at Daniel, hoping for reassurance, for a sign that he would protect her from this moment. Instead, she found anticipation in his eyes, sparks she hadn't seen in months. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing closer. Emma realized this was no longer a suggestion, no longer a thought whispered in the safety of her living room. This was real. Standing in front of her, asking for an answer, she swallowed hard, her heart pounding against her ribs. She wanted to speak, to say no, to stop it before it began. But her voice wouldn't come. All she could do was sit there, caught between the love she had for her husband and the fear that saying no might push him further away. And in that silence, Emma understood that no matter what happened next, nothing about their marriage or their friendship with Michael and Sir would ever be the same. The room grew heavy after Michael's question. Emma could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall every second, louder than the last. She looked at Daniel, hoping he would stop this. Hoping he would smile and say they were joking, that they were just caught in a strange game. But he didn't. Instead, Daniel leaned back in his chair, his lips curling into a nervous smile. He looked alive in a way Emma hadn't seen in months, and that terrified her. Emma's chest tightened. She felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Sarah sat across from her, her expression calm, almost curious, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Michael's eyes lingered on her, kind but steady, as though he was giving her a choice. Emma's hands trembled under the table. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't move. All she could do was listen as Sarah reached for Daniel's hand. The sight pierced Emma's heart. She had never seen another woman touch him like that, and even though it was only a hand resting on his, it felt like betrayal. Daniel didn't pull away. His fingers tightened around Sarah's. That simple motion broke something inside Emma. It wasn't jealousy alone. It was grief. Grief for the man she thought she knew, for the marriage she thought was safe, for the love that had always felt like enough. In that instant, she realized how fragile their bond truly was. Michael leaned closer to her, speaking softly so only she could hear. Emma, you don't have to do anything you don't want to. No one here will force you. His words struck her more deeply than she expected. Kindness in that moment felt sharper than desire. Michael's voice reminded her of everything Daniel had forgotten, that love was supposed to be about safety, trust, and care. She blinked quickly, trying to hold back tears. But they still burned at the corners of her eyes. She turned to Daniel, her voice trembling. Is this what you want? To see me with someone else? To sit there and watch? Daniel hesitated, his face conflicted, but he didn't let go of Sarah's hand. I thought maybe it could help us. Maybe it could bring something back. Emma shook her head, her heart breaking with every word. You don't bring something back by giving it away. Ah! The silence that followed was unbearable. Sarah withdrew her hand quickly, guilt flashing across her face. Michael leaned back, his jaw tight, clearly uncomfortable. But Daniel just looked down at the table, unable to meet his wife's eyes. Emma stood, her legs weak, but her voice stronger now. I can't do this. I thought maybe I could sit here and see where it went, but this isn't me. This isn't us. The room froze. Sarah looked down, embarrassed. Michael gave Emma a small nod, as though he respected her decision. But Daniel's face darkened, torn between frustration and shame. Emma, please, he started. She cut him off, her words sharp but filled with pain. No, if you need this to feel alive, then maybe you don't need me at all. The weight of her words hung in the air. No one moved. The evening that had started with laughter and shared wine had turned into a moment none of them could escape from unscarred. Emma's heart felt heavy, but her mind was clear. She grabbed her coat and walked toward the door, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the buttons. Michael stood as if to help her, but she shook her head. She didn't want anyone else's comfort. She only wanted the silence of her own space. Somewhere she could breathe again. Daniel followed her into the hallway, his voice breaking. Emma, don't walk away. We can talk about this. She turned, her eyes filled with tears. No, Daniel. You already made your choice when you reached for her hand. With that, she stepped out into the cool night air. The silence outside was sharp, almost cleansing, but her chest ached as though she had left part of herself behind. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. Their marriage was no longer the same. The night had ended without passion, without excitement. Instead, it ended with truths she never wanted to face. And Emma, walking alone under the dark sky, realized that sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't. Betrayal lit was the moment you finally saw what was broken. All? Along marriage or their friendship. Would Michael and Sarud ever be the same morning? Light poured into the kitchen, soft but unwelcoming. Emma sat at the table, a cup of coffee cooling in front of her. She hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were swollen, her head heavy. But it wasn't exhaustion that weighed her down, it was the memory of last night. She could still see Sarah's hand on Daniel's, still feel the sharp sting in her chest when he hadn't pulled away. The silence in the house now was louder than any argument could have been. Daniel walked in quietly. His hair was messy, his eyes tired, his steps uncertain. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he stood near the counter, watching her like someone afraid to get too close. The tension between them was so thick that even the sound of the refrigerator humming felt harsh. Finally, he spoke. Emma, I'm sorry. His voice was low, almost broken. But Emma didn't look up. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with her finger, staring at the steam that was fading, just like the warmth of their marriage. I thought maybe it would help us, Daniel continued. I thought maybe it would bring excitement back. But I see now I was wrong. Emma let out a shaky breath, her eyes finally lifting to meet his. Wrong, Daniel. You didn't just make a mistake. You asked me to break everything sacred between us. And when Sarah reached for you, you let her. Daniel winced, guilt flashing across his face. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her, his shoulders slumped. It wasn't about her. It wasn't about Michael either. It was me, feeling like something was missing. I thought this was the answer. Emma's voice trembled. And what about me? Did you stop for 1 second to think about what it would do to me? To us, he dropped his gaze. I thought you'd trust me enough to try. The words cut deep. Trust had been the one thing she thought they would never lose, but last night proved otherwise. Emma's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay steady. Trust isn't about testing each other, Daniel. It's about knowing the other person would never put you in that position. Silence filled the room again. He rubbed his hands together nervously, searching for words, but Emma spoke first. You didn't break us last night. You just showed me the cracks I've been ignoring. I kept telling myself we were fine, that we were steady. But the truth is, we've been drifting for a long time. Daniel's eyes widened. No, Emma, don't say that. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Her lips trembled and she shook her head. You don't fix love by adding other people into it. You fix love by holding on tighter, by reminding each other why you chose each other in the first place. And last night, I didn't feel chosen. I felt replaceable. Her words hung heavy in the air. Daniel reached across the table, his hand trembling as it stretched toward hers. For a moment, Emma almost let him take it. Almost. But then she pulled her hand back, folding it in her lap. The space between them felt wider than the table itself. I don't know if love is enough anymore, she whispered. I don't know if I can unsee what happened. Tears filled Daniel's eyes, but he didn't try to defend himself. He sat there, shoulders hunched, face pale, knowing that no explanation could erase the image burned into her mind. Emma stood, her chair scraping softly against the floor. She picked up her cold coffee, poured it into the sink, and rinsed the cup. Her movements were calm, but inside she was breaking. She had loved this man for 7 years, built a life with him, dreamed of a future with him. But now everything felt uncertain. She turned back to him one last time. His eyes were pleading, desperate for her to say something that would give them hope. But she had no promises left to give. That night changed everything between us forever, she said softly. And I don't know if we'll ever find our way back. With those words, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving Daniel sitting in silence. The sound of her footsteps faded down the hall. And he knew she wasn't just walking away from the table, she was walking away from the life they had built together. The morning sun kept shining through the window, indifferent to the storm that had just broken inside their home. Emma stood alone in the bedroom, staring out at the quiet street, wondering if endings always came like this, not with a loud crash, but with silence, coffee gone cold, and to people realizing love wasn't enough to hold them together anymore.